Hello, and welcome to the Investor Guys Podcast, the ultimate podcast for serious real estate investors in the know. Join your host, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills, as they share their expert insights, strategies, and tips to help you succeed in the world of real estate investing. Get ready to level up your investment game with the Investor Guys Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills.
All right, Bill, how are you? Everybody else, welcome. Welcome to the Investor Guys Podcast. We were just chatting off camera about all the different changes that are coming our way, one way or the other, and without inserting any politics or personal opinions or anything else. One thing I do want to say, and we both predicted that after the election, this whole coronavirus thing and the mask stuff is going to go away. I want to change that prediction because I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think regardless of who the president is going to be, if it's Joe Biden, he's already said he's going to lock down the country until the coronavirus is over. If it's Trump, I think
we're all dead.
Well, yeah, I think it's that the Trump is
economically.
The Democrats are still going to be pushing this whole shutdown. They're still going to be pushing the masks. They're still going to be doing everything. So the coronavirus is not going to go away anytime soon. And one of the things that Bill and I were talking about just before we started this episode is the current iteration of the coronavirus relief bill that is in Congress waiting for the Senate to approve. And we don't know that it's going to be approved or not, but let me go over this and tell you our line of thought. It calls for 1 year of no evictions and 1 year of no foreclosures from the date that it is signed. As real estate investors, that absolutely affects us, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It actually just gives us very strong indicators for where we need to be investing and how we need to be investing. So it's clarification moving into the future. But for those of us or those of you who have properties that are already in this situation, it's the writing on the wall. Again, we don't know that they're going to approve it or not approve it, but one thing that we know for sure, a coronavirus relief bill in some form or another is going to be coming down the pike. And you can guarantee that there's going to be some sort of rent relief or foreclosure relief or something in that bill. And that, again, is going to affect us. And the different ways that that's going to affect us, obviously, if we have tenants that aren't paying rent, that's going to affect our bottom line. We might get a recourse from having to pay our mortgage if we can't pay the mortgage because they're going to have a foreclosure relief. That doesn't mean that we're going to be able to pay it later, because if our tenants aren't paying rent for a year, chances are at the end of the year, they're not going to give us one big giant check for all that rent that they missed so that we can go pay our mortgage. That gets kind of the strategies that Bill and I have been talking about in the last few weeks here. Section 8. Section 8 is a very strong strategy. I am still getting paid from my Section 8 tenants because the government, the United States government, is paying those rents. I'm waiting for a renter to pay it. Yeah. I have other properties where I have tenants who are paying regular rent, but fortunately I have enough Section 8 tenants to hedge all of the debt that I'm owed so that I'm okay moving forward month to month to month. And it wasn't something that was necessarily planned. It's just that's the way my strategy ended up taking me. Looking at the way things are right now, that looks like it would be a good plan for somebody moving forward, to be able to hedge your debt with Section 8 tenants so that you can do the other things that you want to do. I want to let you have a say real quick here, Bill, and then I had a couple other thoughts for the next segment, but weigh in on your side.
Well, a couple of things. One is on the bill that's coming through, whether it's this bill or a new iteration of it. When they go in and they do, I don't know if abatement's really the right word or not, but when they stop foreclosure and they stop eviction for a stated period of time, the thing that you can bet on, the great likelihood is investors will not be included. It will be for your personal residents. It won't be investors. There's an insidious thing going on. It's been going on ever since all this whole lockdown thing started, And all you have to do is open your eyes to see it, and that is small businesses being put out of business every single day. There is a side that wants the government to control everything. And part of that, part of the way to help get rid of small business, and most small businesses, I haven't seen a statistical breakdown on this yet, but I'd be willing to bet the greatest majority of individually owned businesses, the business type, are these restaurants. And they've talked about the incredible number of restaurants that have closed their doors and are not likely to ever open their doors again. But of course, that's not McDonald's, and that's not all the big chains. And same thing with mom and pop grocery stores. They're dropping like flies. Why? Because they were being imposed upon. Walmart wasn't being imposed upon. And so this is all about big business and control, because a lot easier to control a few businesses than it is to control millions. And I think this single family investor is going to be left out of this equation completely. Now, I wish they would get to a point where we could just have all of these bills, doesn't matter which side you're on, all of these bills have, they call them pork bills. The bill is, gee, we're going to give $1 trillion to make masks, as an example. Oh, but in there also, as we famously saw in the last bill that passed, was the bill for updating the Kennedy Center. 24 minutes. So there's one of the things that the president's been trying to do is to say, no, let's focus on what this bill is. If you want to do a bill for the Kennedy Center, you want to do a bill for anything else, fine, go do that bill. This is a bill about the coronavirus, and let's do that. And I don't think that'll ever happen because the deep state's too big and the system is too entrenched. Yeah, but it needs to happen. And the coronavirus bill needs to be separate from, they want to give a monetary incentive for you to be able to pay your rent. I'd much rather see that than simply say, hey, you know what, we're gonna halt evictions for non-rent payment for a year, because we saw this in the foreclosure debacle under Obama. And Kevin, we saw it mainly in Florida, where there was an 18-month freeze on foreclosures, and a ton of people that had the ability to pay and typically paid stopped paying their property, they stopped paying their mortgage payment because they're like, I can't get evicted.
Let's pick that up after this. Let's pick that up after this break. We've got a break that we're going to come up on, and we'll pick up right there.
You are watching the Investor Guys podcast.
The Investor Guys podcast will be back shortly.
Absolution X. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Only at absolutionx.com. Get yours.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
You were talking about Florida. One of the things that I noticed when we got here is one of the things that 18-month moratorium on evictions set the table for here in Florida was making it more difficult for people to get apartments, because those people who didn't pay for 18 months, they ended up with unlawful detainer judgments on their record. Most places here now require, and this is odd because in California we don't do this. They require a first and last month's rent and a security deposit, and you might end up having to pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to move into a apartment that's going to cost you $1,000 a month, because they are trying to make sure that they don't get stung again in a situation like that. That causes a problem for many people.
Texas as well.
Many people who are trying to rent $1,000 apartment have to come up with $6,000 in order to move in. That's crazy. Also, if you have the slightest poor credit, or if you have an eviction or anything else, forget it. You're going to possibly be able to get a really ratty apartment that's going to cost you 5 or 6 times as much as it's worth, because they know that they have you over a barrel, and that's the only way you're going to be able to rent something. It has created problems that are still lasting. We're more than 10 years out on that 2008 debacle, and we're still seeing the effects of that and how it has changed the market. And fortunately, I don't have to deal with that, but it is something that affects the economy. It is something that affects people. And we're going to be seeing that. And that's why Bill and I wanted to do this show. We're going to be seeing that happening in the years to come. And coronavirus is honestly, it's a catalyst that is bringing a lot of these different things to bear. And regardless of who becomes the president in January of 2021, when they actually take office, or when they're elected in November, it's unfortunately, it's not going to go away. We might see it not get as bad, but it is still going to be a situation that's out there. And being prepared for what is to come is going to be key to our success or our demise moving forward.
Yeah. And I think it, I got no problem with us helping people, none whatsoever. But I think it should be people that we mentioned, the restaurants that have shut down. So if you own a restaurant and it's been shut down, and you had 50 people that were employed there, then you and those people ought to have the benefit of that eviction protection and foreclosure protection. I don't have any issues with that, but it's going to likely be, as it was before, a blanket program, and that's going to create problems in a lot of cases where problems don't exist. So all of this points right back to where is the safest place to be today in the real estate market, and should this happen again? Because look, don't kid yourself. Now that the politicians have understood that they can get the American people to kowtow to a virus that's over 99% survivable, we're going to see this again next year, whether it's Corona 20 or whether it's, Fred's Irish pub flu. It doesn't matter. There's going to be something again pop up till they get total control, they being the government, whoever that is, till they get total control of us, and we're allowing that to happen. So there's going to be other stuff pop up. Now, how do you play that to your favor? You look at Section 8 property, because that's going to be an explosion in our market going forward. And again, it gives government control. But what you and I have to do while we still have the opportunities to do that is get involved in the flow of that money. How do you do that? You go out and get Section 8 property. That's what we're going to be doing in Cleveland in November. So make sure that you jump over to investorguyspodcast.com. You read all about the event there. I'm not going to get too heavy into that right now, but you need to be aware that if you are involved in government housing, it is going to be the safest place to be in the real estate market going forward, just like it was when the shutdown started. And what started this whole conversation and this podcast was Kevin and I having a private conversation about real estate holdings and how they were affected once the shutdown happened. And his comment to me when I asked about his holdings were, they haven't been affected at all. And I was like, wow, what an eye opener that was that we're going through. So this is what we're stressing, and it's every major market in the country is underserviced in the Section 8 prospect. And so you take a look at, we'll tell you all the ins and outs of it. And there's a lot of myths out there about what it is and what it isn't. We'll explain all of that.
There really is a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, there's a ton of misinformation about Section 8. It is one of the single most attractive things that you can possibly do in the rental market right now, period, bar none, end of story. And once you understand how it works, why it works the way it does, and the type of returns that you can make, you're going to go, Why have I been hearing everybody else? Don't know, don't care. You got two guys here that are preaching to you every single week, multiple times. This is where you need to be looking. We'll help you get there, just like it's what we're doing. So we'll help you get there.
And we're going to talk about a little more about that in just a minute. We're going to come back from a break, and we're going to talk about how you're going to actually be able to see that real time working for you in one of our buyers events. But I also want to keep covering what we're talking about because it is very important. And we're going to pick that up in just a second.
You are watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at CaymanK.com.
Absolution X. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Limited editions. Unique, exclusive designs. Seek your absolution. Get yours. Only at absolutionx.com.
And we're back with the Investor Guys podcast. And we were going to talk about being able to see how Section 8 works real time in one of our upcoming buyers events, but we've got time for that still. I want to point something out to the American people and to the American investor. Our politicians do not have your best interest at heart. They could have passed a bill or could be pushing a bill, and who knows what's ultimately going to happen, okay? And maybe this is the time to pick up your phone and pick up your pen and pencil and write a letter to your congressperson and to your senators. They could be paying 2/3 of the rent, or they could be paying half of the rent for anybody who's not able to make the rent, rather than making you as the property owner be responsible for other constituents not paying their rent. What we're looking at is the first step in socialism. And again, I'm not trying to be political, but this is literally the first step in socialism, where they take private ownership away from the people. So what's going to happen is they are trying to push people out of business by not having them be able to pay for their properties. So like I said, you may have a year's moratorium on a foreclosure, and Bill doesn't think it's going to apply to investment properties, and I tend to agree. It's not going to apply to commercial properties. It's not going to apply to investment properties. Even if it did, though, at the end of that year, you know you're not going to get a giant check from all of your tenants for a year's worth of rent so that you can pay your mortgage for that last year that you missed as well. So you need to keep this in mind and address your politicians on this, because this is just one single characteristic of where we are going as a nation under our the tracks that we're on. Okay, this is not something that we want to have to deal with year after year after year after year. Like I said, for investors who know what they're doing, this isn't a bad thing. This basically is clear indicators pointing at the strategies that we need to be employing right here and right now. And there's other factors that come into play, and we'll cover those on future shows. But this gives us a clear indicator of what we need to be doing for our investment strategies. Like I said, the investment strategy that I chose, I am heavily invested in Section 8 cash flow properties, so that any other properties that I have that I'm not cash flowing on right now, I'm still hedged. I'm still good. I don't have an issue with having to worry about whether I'm going to make those payments on those other properties. I may have to tighten my belt a little bit and go on a few less vacations. Right now, it doesn't look like the situation, but my point is I'm not going to lose everything because I'm not getting my rent payments. We have different programs that Bill and I do that we go, they're called buyers events, and we go to different locations across the country. And some of the locations that we go to, our primary focus, like Cleveland, is Section 8. And when we do a buyers event, we actually show you real time on the ground in that city, how the programs work, the types of properties that we're looking at, the types of things we're trying to do with the properties, the areas to buy in, not to buy in. This is the time to start focusing on, whether you're taking our course or not, start focusing on strategies that are going to be future proof. I guess I don't even want to say recession proof, because it's future proof, because our market normally goes through recessions, and it's not something that surprises us if we know what we're doing. But the game is changing. They're literally knocking all the pieces off of the board and changing the game. And unfortunately, we don't have a choice but to play the game the way they're telling us we have to play it.
And so when you're doing that, you want to look at, we've made this comment in previous episodes about who is the single greatest tenant on the planet. And when we say Section 8, you may think, no. But when we say Section 8, what you have to understand is who that tenant is. It's not the person living in the property. It's the federal government. So if I'm going to do business with somebody, I want to get paid to do business with them. If I'm doing business with the single richest entity on the planet, I've got the greatest likelihood that I'm going to continue to get paid no matter what else is going on. And this is the thing that we're trying to stress to you. No matter if we go back into lockdown, guess what still happens with Section 8 tenants? You may not be able to pay your rent. I may not be able to pay mine. Kevin may not be able to pay his, but the Section 8 tenants can, because it's the government. They're making the payment. So that's who I want to do business with. I want to get in the flow of money from the biggest producer and spender of money on the planet, and somebody that I can rely on and count on to get my rent to me paid. And that's the federal government. And that's how we do that, is through Section 8.
And I've had this conversation with a lot of different people in the past. I personally don't think that we should be giving handouts to everybody. I personally don't agree with welfare and the Section 8 programs and food stamps and everything else. I think that there's a better way to do it. I think my philosophy through life has always been, and that applies to real estate, is teach a man to fish, don't give the man a fish. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I would rather see our money and our efforts being spent doing those things. But the programs exist. And if they exist, then we should be able to take advantage of them. And we should not have any personal issues with that. The money is out there, and it's just legally, we are entitled to it just the same as anybody else. This is our tax dollars coming back to us, okay? In a nutshell, this is money that we're paying out coming back to us. And this is money that other people are paying out, being able to help us profit, which is what we would do for any type of business. We are helping the economy in doing this. We are possibly making a dent in homelessness, because if the Section 8 housing wasn't available, we'd have a lot more a lot more homeless people. Find a way to wrap your brain around it and realize that you're not taking advantage of a situation that you don't agree with. Again, like I said, I don't agree with the social welfare programs and the way they are set up. But if they exist, then I am able to make $1 from it, then I absolutely am going to do that.
And you know what? If you have a way to be able to help somebody else, and this is what a lot of people miss about most real estate investors that I know, very generous people. And I know Kevin's very generous. So when you have an opportunity in front of you to be able to help somebody else, you're always going to benefit, whether that's emotionally or whether that's financially. In our case, it's both, when you help somebody else out. And being involved in Section 8 is a way to help somebody else at the same time that you're helping yourself, because the government does an incredibly poor job, as you know. If you've been awake in the last 240 years or whatever we've been around, the government does a terrible job at being in business. What they do a good job at is protecting us from foreign invaders and those kind of things. But running business is terrible for them. One of the great examples of that is there was the old place out in Nevada where prostitution is legal, the ranch or something like that.
Bunny Ranch.
They got behind on their taxes.
Oh, that was
wasn't the
Bunny Ranch. That was someplace else. But yeah,
the chicken ranch. The government took this house of prostitution over in the state of Nevada, and it was shut down within about 2 years because they couldn't make it run profitably. There's a lot of jokes with that, but it's just to highlight that, hey, the government doesn't know how to be in business, but they do know how to do certain things. And one of those things is to incent you and I to go do the things that they can't do correctly. And so Section 8 is one of those great ways that they incent us to do that. I know we're running way over. I'm going to hush.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. I think there's enough to talk about that we can cover a lot of things in the next few shows, because I also want to cover being able to hedge ourselves with other projects. Also, what we're looking at right now with what is happening, we're seeing mass migrations from certain states and cities into other areas. And those are things that we need to consider also as real estate investors. We're going to cover those topics in the shows to come. So keep us on, stay tuned. We are on every day, Monday through Friday, 12 noon on YouTube Live, on Facebook, and podcast platforms everywhere. So tune in, watch us. If you don't catch us live, then you can catch us recorded, okay? But pay attention, because we've got a lot of changes coming up. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. We'll talk to you later. Investor Guys Podcast, thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.
Thank you for tuning in to the Investor Guys Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on the latest trends and insights in the world of real estate investing. Also, don't forget to check us out and see all of our episodes at theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Email us, contact@investorguyspodcast.com. Remember, the key to financial success lies in staying informed and taking action. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, happy investing.